Hi, I'm Lisa Braginton, Wild Birds Unlimited Manager for Moana Nursery, and today I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about how you might enjoy feeding the birds more, whether you're new to the hobby or just want to get a little bit more out of your backyard bird feeding. One thing to consider when you're feeding the birds, especially if you haven't had many birds to your yard or your current habits are not successful, is that birds can be intimidated by feeders. It sounds kind of funny, right? But it is, they're naturally cautious, naturally wary, and so again, especially if you're feeding birds for the first time, a great place to start is a bird feeder that doesn't obstruct the food much. You can even think about it as a feederless feeder, if you will, something that they're not going to notice much or something that won't get in between them and the food. One of these is a flying start feeder. These can be used with seed cylinders or stackables. Stackables are awesome because you can offer a variety of different flavors. Naturally nuts, which is a nice nutty high-fat food. Things like bug nut and berry, which has mealworms in it, which a lot of birds this time of year are looking for specifically to feed their young. Birds' feeding habits change throughout the season, and this time of year they tend to be very focused on protein and bugs. So this is a great one to feed this time of year. With the stackables, you can offer different types of food and then see which ones the birds eat. The other thing with offering a variety of different foods in this format is you'll observe different foods being eaten by different birds, even if the foods are all being consumed equally. So you can use this format to determine what birds like in your yard and what birds you like to see on your feeders. So it's a great initial approach to feeding. A tray feeder, likewise, is something that most birds find very accessible. They're not going to be intimidated by it, and it allows you to offer, again, a variety of easy to eat foods, and or as a snack feeder if you're looking to feed or supplement other main foods. A tray feeder should be part of everybody's bird feeding station. Once you've observed the birds, usually for a couple of weeks, and determined, okay, I saw that little juniper titmouse and it was eating on the safflower seed. So safflower seed is something I want to feed in my yard because it's a cute little bird that I know is going to come to that food. And you can make your food selections and your feeder selections tailored to the types of birds that you want to see in your yard. Once you're into the hobby and enjoying your birds, you'll probably want to do some additional things to make your yard a nice place for you and the birds to hang out. So in addition to introducing plants that may be attractive to the birds, ideally you're going to include some native plants in there that will be attractive to bugs that may be in the area. And that's part of the cycle that we don't necessarily always think about. But the more that you can replicate what the birds would find naturally, the more likely they're going to be successful and going to be able to reproduce, and the more likely they are to visit your yard. So plant plants, but think of native plants that will be habitat for naturally occurring insects that the birds may then feed on. One element of your habitat or your landscape that you should never ignore is adding water. Water is one of the most important things to make certain that you see lots of birds in your yard. You may see very distinct seasonal changes throughout the year, and you want to make sure that you're being seasonally savvy. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what happens when different weather patterns move through. For instance, there's a very popular little bird in the wintertime here, the Oregon or dark-eyed junco, that has a black little cap, and he's a cheery little bird. And we usually see him coming to our feeders in the fall right before winter storms. So if you know that, and you know that a junco is a ground feeder, you can anticipate that situation and get some food that the junco would like millet, and put it in a ground feeder on the ground. So you want to be seasonally savvy. And of course, one of the happiest things about being seasonally savvy this time of year, as it starts to stay warm for a while, is that we can ensure that hummingbirds are going to visit. And hummingbirds are part of that seasonally savvy cycle where we want to make sure we get our nectar feeders out in April when they may be starting to arrive, and leave them up clean and fresh throughout the summer months until the birds start to leave in September. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the joy of bird feeding and taken away how to understand the birds that might be visiting your feeders, what they might like to eat, how to tailor your offerings to those birds that you want to watch, make your yard a comfortable place to be for you and the birds, and then time your offerings in tune with nature to be seasonally savvy. And as always, if you have any questions or just want to talk birds, please be sure to visit one of our 3 retail locations at Moana Nursery, and I'll be happy to help.